Welcome back to the RxTales podcast, your #1 source for pharmaceutical infotainment on the World Wide Web. Well, maybe not #1 yet, but at least you know I'm not trying to sell you something by seamlessly weaving in sponsored content. Yet. I'm your host, Dr. Mark, and today we're talking about a true back-to-school classic. No, not pencils. No, not books. I'm talking about head lice. So buckle up. Today we're talking about the most famous human parasite, the louse. We'll go all the way back to the very beginning of our relationship with these creepy crawlies. We'll look at how lice have been a big, itchy part of human history, and we'll explore some of the many treatment methods people have used over the years. We'll get into the real science behind lice and treatment methods. We'll clear up some common misunderstandings and talk about which treatment methods work and which ones don't, and why pharmacists like me are your best allies when it comes to helping you deal with these pesky parasites. Even just the mention of lice tends to make us a little itchy. You're scratching right now. I see you. It's okay, don't worry. That's what's called a psychosomatic response. Don't get it confused, though, with the actual psychiatric condition called delusional parasitosis, which is exactly what it sounds like. The persistent and irrational fear that you've got bugs crawling all over your body and even in your skin. Gross. The louse is actually a pretty interesting arthropod. Fossil records indicate they've been around since at least the Cretaceous period. We're talking like 65 to 140 million years ago. Since that time, they have evolved into almost 5,000 known species, and they're everywhere. They can be found on every continent. Yes, even Antarctica. Penguins alone have over 15 different kinds of lice specific just to them. Gross, penguins. Gross. And it's not just penguins. Lice actually live on every single species of birds and mammals, basically any warm-blooded creature, except for 3: pangolins, bats, and the platypus. And of these 5,000 or so known species of lice that we have, over 80% of those are found exclusively on birds, especially large birds. A lot of bird lice out there. And based on their diet, you can split lice into 2 groups. You have chewing lice and sucking lice. This is not going to get better, so just fair warning. So sucking lice, well, they suck. They feed off of body secretions and other body fluids that they suck up from their host animal. Chewing lice eat solid stuff, like dead skin, feathers, remember, a lot of bird lice out there, hair, and basically just crud. As far as human lice go, they are all of the sucking variety, because they suck. Couple quick facts about lice. Lice can't fly, because they don't have wings, and they can't jump, but they can Uber. No, seriously, they can. If the host animal that they're living on dies, lice can hitch a ride on another bug. This is called phoresis. Okay, lice are weird. So enough about bird lice. You guys didn't tune in to hear all about that. We're going to focus now on human lice. So humans and lice actually go way back. Archaeologists have found lice eggs cemented to Paleolithic human hair strands, which means that while we were busy inventing pottery, fire, and agriculture, lice were busy inventing being gross. There are 2 species of lice that feed exclusively on humans. The first is Pediculus humanus. Now, this species is actually split into 2 subspecies. Pediculus humanus capitis, that's your head lice, and Pediculus humanus humanus, which is the body louse. Body lice can transmit disease, while head lice typically can't. Second species of lice that's found on humans is Thyrus pubis, or the pubic louse. Yes, we're going to talk about pubic lice, but it's not for a little bit in the video, so you're cool for right now. Head and body lice share a common ancestor with chimpanzee lice, which split off from that group around 7 million years ago. And then the head lice and body lice split off from each other around the same time that humans started wearing clothing. Pubic lice, though, are actually more closely related to gorilla lice. They spread from gorillas to humans around 3 million years ago. Yes, it's probably what you're thinking. I'm not going to say it. Gross. So lice have been with us for millions of years, but they're not just an itchy inconvenience. They've actually had starring roles in history. Lice eggs have been found on mummified corpses in Egypt and Peru. They're even in the friggin' Bible. In the book of Exodus, one of the 10 plagues, yep, lice. Although, some recent scholars believe that the Hebrew word knim, which was translated as lice, actually refers to sandflies. So it's kind of up for debate. Either way, pretty gross. In medieval times, everybody had lice. I mean, everybody. Lice were everywhere. We're talking head lice, body lice, the whole works. In northern parts of Europe, homes were poorly heated, even the homes of the wealthy. The common people who were poor, they kept warm just by huddling together in a really small space around a fire. But the wealthy, who had bigger houses, they kept warm by literally wearing a shit ton of clothing. This is the part in the video where you're probably asking yourself, wait a minute, I see where this is going. Is he going to talk about Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was murdered in 1170 AD? Hell yes, I'm going to talk about Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury, who was murdered in 1170 AD. So the murder of Thomas Becket is a whole story on its own. But here's how it ties into lice. So Thomas Becket was murdered in Canterbury Cathedral on December 29th in 1170. His body was laid out all the next day on the 30th, and on New Year's Eve, the 31st, they were preparing him for burial. Chroniclers of the time wrote that while they had the archbishop laid out for burial, he was dressed in an extraordinary collection of clothing. This is what the dude was wearing. He had on a brown mantle, which is like a big overcloak, a white surplice, whatever that thing is. Underneath that, he was wearing a lamb's wool coat. Beneath that, a second wool coat. Beneath that, a third wool coat. This is getting ridiculous. Beneath that, the black robe of the Benedictine order. Underneath that, another shirt. And then underneath that, a hair shirt. This guy was bundled up at a level I don't think we have ever seen before. He probably looked like Randy from A Christmas Story. The thing is, though, Thomas Becket, like everybody else at the time, had a whole lot of lice on him. So, as his body was laying there and it got really cold, well, lice can't feed off a dead organism. So all the lice that were living in these many layers of clothing started to crawl out. According to a witness, the vermin boiled over like water in a simmering cauldron, and the onlookers burst out with alternate weeping and laughing. Throughout the Middle Ages, even up through the 19th century, head lice were super duper common. Books on manners instructed children that it was improper to pick lice and nits out of one's hair in polite company. Carl Linnaeus, the guy who came up with the whole classification system we use for life, he suggested that children were actually protected by their lice from a lot of other diseases. You were so close, Carl. You're so close. So humans have tried everything over the years to get rid of lice. Historically, here are some of the most common remedies that were used. Number one, shaving your head. That's actually effective. It removes the habitat. Can't get lice if you don't have any hair. They would use vinegar and oil to help loosen the nits from the hair. This may or may not have been effective. So some folk remedies that people used over the years, like bacon grease or lead ointment, they actually tried to smother the lice, but most were just messy, smelly, or even dangerous. And unfortunately, spoiler alert, lice always came back. They're still here. So All right, let's break it down. Human head lice. So around the globe, there are hundreds of millions of cases of human head lice every single year. Head lice spread by literally crawling onto your hair. Remember, they don't fly and they don't jump. They can do this through either direct head-to-head contact, through a vector such as like a hair accessory or a hat, or anything fabric-y like a towel or furniture. What about dogs and cats? Can you get lice from your pets? No, you cannot get lice from a pet. Human lice are very picky eaters. You know, they only like us. No risk of getting lice from your dog and cat. You guys are cool. Lice use their saliva to stick their eggs to the human hair shaft about like 1/8 of an inch from the scalp. Has to be at just the right space to have the perfect level of warmth for that egg to hatch. They use their saliva and it gets really sticky. It's like a super glue. This makes getting rid of them all the more challenging. In 6 to 10 days, the eggs hatch. Unlike other insects, lice don't have a larval stage, like a worm type phase. No, they're born as actual mini adults called nymphs. And these nymphs will molt several times before finally reaching their final adult form. They feed by biting the scalp and sucking your blood. And the reason it itches is from an allergic reaction to their saliva. Yeah, told you this was going to be gross. So are there health risks from lice? Not really. Lice are a parasite, not a disease. So the risks come from scratching too much, causing open wounds, or leading to infection. Head lice do not spread disease in the US today. So lice are gross, but they're not deadly. Now let's talk about body lice. Body lice, unlike head lice, live on, you guessed it, the body. Well, that's not strictly true. Body lice actually live on clothing, and they just crawl off of the clothing to feed, and then they crawl back onto the clothing when they're done. Again, gross. Body lice can also spread disease, which makes them very concerning. During World War I, soldiers in the trenches weren't just fighting each other. They were scratching non-stop. Body lice spread a disease called endemic typhus, which killed over 2 million people between World War I up till about 1922. At the time, they were given a nickname, cooties. Yes, that cooties. It's hard to imagine, but just over 100 years ago, cooties were a literal public health hazard. Makes that playground insult seem a lot more insidious. Body lice are far less common today. The individuals most at risk for body lice are people who wear the same clothing every day for long periods of time. This is typically unhoused people, people living in shelters, or people living in extreme poverty. I'm going to get serious here for a second. This really puts things into perspective for me. It's a reminder that I have a lot to be grateful for, and you probably do too. Also that we need to take better care of each other. No one should have to live like that. All right, that part's over. Now let's move on to pubic lice. You knew this was coming. You knew it. Don't lie to yourself. First of all, I think pubic lice should get a better name. They actually should be called like coarse hair lice, because they're not just found in that area. They can be found on any place you have coarse hair, like armpit hair, beards, chest hair, even eyebrows. I don't think I've made this better for you, have I? So pubic lice can be sexually transmitted, but they're not an STD. Again, lice aren't a disease, they're a parasite. We're kind of splitting pubic hairs here, but again, I don't see how that makes it any better. And just like head lice, these little critters are spread through direct contact with a person who has pubic lice or through a vector like a towel or clothing. Okay, you made it through. We're not going to talk about pubic lice anymore. You sat through that. The rest of this video, I'm going to focus on head lice, specifically treatments. But just so you're aware, the treatment options are basically the same for all types of human lice. Let's talk treatment options.
Turn around. Be lousy. Turn around.
We'll start with over-the-counter remedies. First up, you've got the pyrethrins. You've got permethrin, which is what's in nits, or pyrethrin. There's actually a handful of pyrethrins out there, like piperenil, butoxide. But they all come from the same thing. These drugs work by paralyzing an insect's nervous system. The downside, resistance is really common. It's estimated about 77%. So a lot of times these treatments don't work and they have to be retreated, or you end up with really resistant infections. Why so much resistance? Well, would you believe that these drugs have been used as far back as the Middle Ages, even as far back as ancient Rome? It's true. Pyrethrins are naturally occurring insect-killing chemicals that are found in two species of chrysanthemum, the Dalmatian chrysanthemum and the Persian chrysanthemum. When crushed up and mixed into a paste, this is basically the same thing as what we have today. So pyrethrins, they're not harsh chemicals, they're all natural, baby. And they don't just kill lice. Pyrethrins kill pretty much any insect. But they won't kill the nits, those are the eggs. So you're gonna wanna retreat in about 7 to 10 days. Now, come here. Listen close to this next part. It doesn't matter which treatment method you choose. The most important factor in getting rid of lice and keeping them gone is combing. You gotta comb that hair really, really thoroughly to get out all the nits. If you don't, you're gonna end up right back where you started with a head full of bugs. Next up, ivermectin lotion. Yes, ivermectin is a bona fide treatment for lice. Whoa, slow your roll there, Karen on Facebook. We're talking about topical 0.5% ivermectin lotion. It's available over the counter. It's called Lice, and not to be confused with ivermectin tablets. Those are prescription only. And ivermectin kills lice in basically the same way as pyrethrins, or a very similar method, by paralyzing the nerve cells. Now let's look at some prescription options. First up, Spinosad. The brand name is Natroba. This is a naturally occurring chemical that's found in a particular type of bacteria that's found in the soil. Spinosad kills lice and their eggs, which is really cool. And it has a really interesting mechanism of action. Unlike the other treatments we talked about that shut off the nervous system, like turning off the breakers in your house, Spinosad turns everything on. It's kind of like a chemical electric chair, and it's very effective, and it's safe for kids 6 months and up. If you want to go one level deeper on the iceberg of lice treatments, the next one is malathion. The brand name is Ovide. Now, this one is totally synthetic. It's a type of chemical called an organophosphate. Causes nerve paralysis and death. It works, but the downside is it's highly flammable. There's a real risk of your head catching on fire. This is a backup option. It really should only be used if you have other treatments that fail. We're going to throw out an honorable mention here to my good friend Lindane. So Lindane lotion, Lindane shampoo, this was actually a second or third line treatment for lice that was around for a long time, but this was discontinued back in 2023. Why? Lindane is super toxic. Yes, it kills lice. It may also kill you, though. The side effects from this include seizures and nerve damage and death. Yes, death. So let's look at some non-drug options. Maybe you're saying, hey, I don't want to use a medication on my scalp. What are my options if I don't want to go that route? Well, you've actually got several decent choices. First up, dehydration. You can actually use a hairdryer to kill lice if it's on a hot enough setting. The heat will actually dry out the insect's body and kill them. But the thing is, you don't want to do this at home. Don't use just a regular hairdryer. You could end up blowing lice all around the room and onto other people. Not a good idea. This has to be done by a trained professional using a special type of lice vacuum hairdryer thing. Looks kind of like that. Also, you can simply do what's called wet combing. You wet the hair with some type of material. You can use water. There's really no evidence that shows that like oil or mayonnaise makes it any better, but literally just combing. You can get rid of lice by combing alone without using any chemicals. Again, the combing is the most important part. Don't forget. And finally, just shave your head. Worked in medieval times, it works today. Can't get lice if you don't have hair. Is it extreme? Yes. Does it work? Also yes. All right, so let's review. Effectiveness ranking in terms of where I would start and where you want to go. Spinosad, the prescription-only treatment, is likely your best option because it kills the lice and it kills their eggs. Next up, over-the-counter ivermectin lotion. Very easy to use. Usually it's once and done. Third on the list is where I would put all the pyrethrins. That's like Nix and Rid. Those are easy to use. They're cheap and available over the counter, but their effectiveness can be pretty low because of resistance. And then finally, malathion. Again, this is like only in extreme cases. I would only go this option if every other treatment has failed. Oh, and no matter what you use, don't forget to comb. I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The thorough combing is the only thing that's going to prevent those lice from coming back. Okay, we've looked at what works for lice treatment. Let's take a look at what doesn't work. There's a lot of wellness content online that's maybe not the most reliable. All right, let's start with smothering agents. Vaseline, mayonnaise, olive oil, butter, essential oils. No, they do not cure lice. That's fine if you're making salad dressing, but at best you're wasting time while the lice multiply. There's actually no evidence that these treatments are effective. Other things that don't work: flea and tick sprays for animals, or basically anything from the pest control aisle at Lowe's or Home Depot. These things are not meant for head lice. They're not meant for putting on the human body. They can actually be really harmful to your skin and cause a lot of side effects. Don't do that. Kerosene and gasoline. I shouldn't have to tell you this. Don't put anything flammable on your head. Other things like bleach, acetone, vodka. No, 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 no. Don't do it. That doesn't work. The worst thing I've seen online purporting to be a lice treatment are these do-it-yourself suffocation bags. Basically a plastic bag that you put on the head to suffocate the lice. We're going to get serious here for a minute. Come here. Don't ever put a plastic bag on your head. Don't put a plastic bag on your kid's head. This could be fatal. Do not do it, ever. Seriously, this one isn't funny. I'm not joking here. Do not do this ever. The fact that I was able to find a headline like this is really, really scary. Please talk to your pharmacist. That's why we're here. We're happy to help you make the right choice. So let's clear up a couple of myths while we're at it. First, only dirty kids get lice. Wrong. Lice has nothing to do with cleanliness. Head lice like clean hair. They actually prefer it because it's easier to grab onto and it's less greasy. Head lice has nothing to do with the cleanliness of a person or their character or anything else about them. Another myth that's pretty common is that pets spread lice. We talked about this before, but just so that you're sure, human lice are picky eaters and they only like to eat us. So a lot of these myths persist because of online influencer content. I say that with full realization that I am giving you online influencer content. So stick with the advice of your physician or your pharmacist, not Brenda from Facebook. All right, so here's where I put on my white coat. Pharmacists are your first line of defense against lice. We can do a lot of things for you. We can recommend the most effective treatment. We can also explain the correct methods for application of these treatments. It's important to note here, over half of over-the-counter treatment failures are due to misuse, not using it correctly. We can also tell you when it's time to see your doctor, if you might need a prescription product. Not only that, but we can save you a lot of time from having to try out dangerous or ineffective remedies. So yes, your local pharmacist is basically a lice SWAT team. Well, there you have it. Everything you ever wanted to know about lice. Hopefully this information comes in handy if you find yourself with an itch you just can't scratch. The good news is they're not really dangerous head lice. The bad news is they are relentless. In the words of Jeff Goldblum, lice finds a way. Okay, that was a bad impression. Sorry, Jeff. But with the right treatment, good combing, and some pharmacist advice, you will win the battle against head lice. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Dr. Mark. If you like this episode, please hit the buttons down there, subscribe to my channel, and share this with a friend. And if your head is itching right now, sorry, that's on me. We'll see you next time on RxTales.